Since I was spending an entire week in this beautiful part of North Dakota, I set out to experience as much of Medora as I possibly could. And if you're planning a visit but only have a day or two, don't worry, by the end of this video, I'll tell you exactly what I'd prioritize so you can make the most out of your time here. Here's everything I wanted to accomplish during my week in Medora: Theodore Roosevelt National Park, Gospel Brunch, Pitchfork Steak Fondue, Medora Musical, Theodore Roosevelt Library Drone Show, Theodore Roosevelt Strenuous Life Performance, horseback riding inside Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and Theodore Roosevelt Dinner Show. Over the next week, I checked off this list, explored a lot of what Medora had to offer, and learned which experiences I think are worth prioritizing if you're planning your own visit. We also made a few mistakes along the way, and I'll share those with you so you can avoid making the same ones when you plan your own Medora adventure. Day 1 started out with what I would consider one of the most underrated national parks I have ever visited. Theodore Roosevelt National Park is truly a spectacular place, and honestly, I wasn't prepared for just how beautiful it would be. The park was created to honor the legacy of President Theodore Roosevelt, who first came to this area in 1883 after the death of his wife and mother. During his time here, he found healing in the rugged landscape of the Badlands and the challenges of ranch life. His experiences in North Dakota helped shape his conservation values later in life and influenced the work he did to protect America's public lands. Today, Theodore Roosevelt National Park protects over 70,000 acres of incredible landscapes, wildlife, and history. The South Unit is the most visited area of the park, and the Scenic Loop Drive takes you about 36 miles through colorful badlands, wide-open prairie, and some of the most beautiful views in North Dakota. One of the things that makes this park so special is the wildlife. As we explored, we saw bison rolling in the dust, wild horses running across the road, and prairie dogs popping up from their towns, chirping and keeping watch over everything happening around them. The park is also home to elk, deer, wild turkey, and countless other species that make every drive feel like a new adventure. I had planned to spend time exploring both the South Unit and the North Unit of the park, but a change in weather meant our plans had to shift. Honestly, I think that's one of the best parts of traveling. You always have a reason to come back, and I already know I want to return someday to experience more of what this incredible place has to offer. There are plenty of hiking trails throughout the park if you want to get out and explore on foot, but if hiking isn't an option, don't worry, you can still experience so much from your vehicle. The scenic drive through the South Unit is absolutely worth doing, with overlooks and wildlife viewing opportunities around every corner. Theodore Roosevelt National Park was the perfect way to start this adventure, and it immediately showed me why Medora is such a special place to visit. After spending the day exploring the South Unit of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, we ended our visit at the Visitor Center, and I always recommend making time for these stops when visiting a national park. They're not just places to grab a map or use the restroom, they're where you can really start to understand the history, people, and stories that shaped the land you're standing in. Inside the Visitor Center, you'll find exhibits that tell the story of Theodore Roosevelt's connection to this area, the history of the Badlands, and the incredible wildlife that calls this place home. There are displays about Roosevelt's time as a rancher in North Dakota, his conservation legacy, and how his experiences here helped shape the person he would become as the President of the United States. There are also some truly fascinating artifacts on display. One of the most unusual is the fossilized skeleton of an ancient crocodile relative called Champsosaurus, a reminder that the landscape has a history stretching back millions of years. You can also see items connected directly to Theodore Roosevelt, including his hunting rifles and the undershirt he was wearing when he was shot during a campaign stop in October of 1912. One of my favorite things about visiting national park visitor centers is watching the short films they show. And this trip, the film was called Refuge of the American Spirit. These films are such a great way to learn about the history and significance of the park before continuing exploring. Just outside the Visitor Center is another incredible piece of history, the Maltese Cross Cabin. This was one of Theodore Roosevelt's first homes in the Dakota Territory after arriving here in 1883. He had the cabin built near the Little Missouri River while he was beginning his cattle ranching adventures, and it became a place where he spent time hunting, writing, and experiencing the rugged lifestyle that would leave such a lasting impression on him. Inside the cabin, you'll find a recreation of what life would have looked like during Roosevelt's time here, including period fashions, a writing desk, kitchen items, and personal touches that give you a glimpse into the life of a young Roosevelt before he entered the White House. One of the most fascinating things about this little cabin is the journey it has taken. The Maltese Cross Cabin has been moved and rebuilt multiple times throughout its history. It traveled across the country to appear at world fairs and historical exhibits, allowing people from around the country to learn about Roosevelt's connection to the West. After years of traveling, it finally found its permanent home here beside the South Unit Visitor Center, where visitors can experience this piece of history right where it belongs. Before leaving the Visitor Center, I made sure to add another stamp to my National Parks passport book. These little stamps have become one of my favorite souvenirs from traveling. They're simply a reminder of every place I've explored and every story I've collected along the way. After spending the first day exploring the park, I knew I wasn't quite ready to leave, so on day 2, I decided to head back into the park on my own and do the South Unit Loop drive just one more time. And I'm so glad I did, because this time the skies had completely changed. The clouds had added so much drama to the landscape, bringing out the colors and textures of the Badlands in a way I hadn't seen on day 1. The layers of sandstone, clay, and prairie stretched out in every direction, with deep canyons, winding rivers, and towering formations that looked almost like they belonged on another planet. One of the things I love about places like this is that even when you're traveling the same road, it never feels like the same experience. The light changes, the weather changes, the wildlife moves, and suddenly a place you've already seen feels completely new. As I was nearing the end of my drive, a thunderstorm began rolling in, and that's when I came across one of the most memorable moments from my entire trip. A herd of bison were making their way along the roadway, walking right beside my truck as the storm clouds flashed lightning in the distance. There was something incredibly peaceful and almost magical about watching these massive animals move through the landscape exactly as they have for generations. The South Unit of Theodore Roosevelt National Park is home to a large herd of bison, with the park's population typically managed to stay around several hundred animals. And on this day, I was lucky enough to see not only the adults, but also so many little calves following closely behind their mothers, hurrying to keep up as the herd moved along. Moments like this are exactly why I love exploring national parks. You can plan your route, pick your stops, and make your itinerary, but the most unforgettable experiences are often the ones you could never schedule. Watching the herd of bison move through the Badlands with a storm approaching in the background was something I know I'll remember for a very long time. One of the unexpected highlights of my time in Medora was attending the Gospel Brunch at the Town Hall Theater. This has been a Medora tradition for many years, combining a delicious brunch with incredible live music and storytelling. And I have to say, the food was absolutely delicious. It was the perfect way to start the day, but the real star of the show was the entertainment. The musicians and singers were incredibly talented, and the energy in the room was contagious. Whether you're familiar with gospel music or hearing it for the first time, there's something really special about watching people share their passion through music. I'll be honest, I'm not a very religious person, and I sometimes feel a little out of place in religious settings. But that's what I loved about this experience. It wasn't just about the message, it was about the music, the talent, and the joy that filled the room. I've always appreciated incredible singers and musicians, and this was one of the moments where you can simply sit back and appreciate people doing what they love. The Gospel Brunch was a wonderful reminder that sometimes the experiences outside your comfort zone end up being some of your favorites. It was a really fun, welcoming, and memorable part of my time in Medora, and I'm really glad I decided to give it a try. Day 4 of our Medora adventure happened to fall on the 4th of July, which made this already special trip even more memorable. Since it was a busy holiday weekend, things were a little bit different than normal. Typically, visitors can park at the top of the hill near the entrances for the Medora Musical and the Pitchfork Steak Fondue, but with the crowds expected that day, parking was moved down to the bottom of the hill. From there, we took a golf cart ride over to the shuttle stop, and then a bus brought us up the hill to the entrance area. Before heading into the Medora Musical, we had dinner at one of Medora's most famous traditions, the Pitchfork Steak Fondue. This unique dining experience has been part of Medora's history for decades, becoming a beloved tradition that visitors look forward to before enjoying the evening's entertainment. And the name really does tell you exactly what happens. The steaks are seasoned, placed onto pitchforks, and lowered into large vats of hot oil, where they are cooked all together in a true Western-style fashion. It's definitely not your typical dinner experience, and that's what makes it such a fun part of visiting Medora. Now, I have to admit I wasn't there for the steak. I actually can't eat steak, and Garner isn't a huge fan of steak, but luckily Medora has you covered. When you buy your tickets, you can choose a no steak option, which meant you could still enjoy the Pitchfork Steak Fondue experience. And honestly, every single thing we ate was delicious. From the sides to the desserts, the entire meal was absolutely worth it. If you're planning your own visit, I do have a few tips. First, arrive early because the line can get pretty long, especially during busy weekends and holidays. Also, keep in mind that not all of the outdoor seating is shaded, so depending on the weather, you may want to plan accordingly. And if you're already planning to see the Medora Musical, I highly recommend adding the Pitchfork Steak Fondue to your evening. The two experiences are right next to each other, making it incredibly convenient, and together they create the classic Medora experience that so many people come here to enjoy.
And pretty spectacular view.
With dinner finished and the sun beginning to set over the Badlands, it was time for the main event, the experience that originally brought me to Medora in the first place, the Medora Musical. After dinner, it was finally time for the experience that originally brought me to this part of North Dakota, the Medora Musical. But before heading down to the amphitheater, I highly recommend taking some time to explore the Welcome Center, which also doubles as the gift shop. The walls are filled with history of the musical, how it began, and why this show has become such an important part of Medora and the surrounding area. The Medora Musical first began in 1965 as a way to honor Theodore Roosevelt and celebrate the spirit of the American West. What started as a small outdoor production has grown into one of North Dakota's most beloved traditions, bringing visitors from all over the country to experience this unique show surrounded by the beauty of the Badlands.
And now it's July 4th. We're here celebrating America's 250th birthday, and I am checking an item off my bucket list, which is to see the Medora Musical. I am so excited. I've been hearing so much about this. Today's going to be amazing, and then I've got a big surprise after the musical that we're going to get to witness, and so make sure you stick around and check that out.
Getting down to the amphitheater seating area was also something I appreciated. There are 3 different options to reach your seats: a long ramp, an escalator, or an elevator, so visitors with different mobility needs can easily access the show. We were also pleasantly surprised by how many little touches made the experience more enjoyable. Each seat had a cushion to make the plastic seats more comfortable, a bottle of water waiting for you, and there was even free popcorn available. On a warm summer evening, those small details made a big difference. The Medora Musical is a tradition that has been running for more than 50 years, and one of the things that makes it special is that the show changes each season.
Our 4th of July celebration on this, the grand opening of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, and on this, the 250th birthday of the greatest nation in the world.
While Theodore Roosevelt and the history of the West remain at the heart of the production, the performances, music, and storytelling continue to evolve year after year. And honestly, the talent in this show was incredible. The costumes were absolutely beautiful, the performers were top-notch, and the entire production was much bigger than I expected. One of my favorite parts was seeing the horses incorporated into the show. It added such an authentic Western feel and was the perfect addition to the performance celebrating this area's history. At this point, I'm going to let the show speak for itself, because the music, the performers, and the incredible backdrop of the Badlands are really what make the Medora Music such a memorable experience, and one you definitely need to experience yourself.
With 13 stars representing the 13 original colonies.
And last but certainly not least, we have the 1960 flag, the longest serving American flag, sporting 50 glorious stars from 50 glorious states.
In search of freedom.
There's a bright golden haze. What you say?
Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more.
After the musical ended, our 4th of July celebration still wasn't over. That evening also marked the grand opening celebration of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, which had just opened its doors here in Medora. President Trump had visited the library a few days earlier, and the opening weekend brought a lot of excitement to this little town in the Badlands. We didn't actually get a chance to tour the library during this trip, but that just gives me another reason to come back. After the musical, we walked over to the lawn near the library, found a spot in the grass, and settled in to watch the drone show celebrating the opening. The show was incredible. As the drones moved across the night sky, there was narration sharing stories about Theodore Roosevelt, his connection to this land, and the experience here that helped shape his life and his passion for conservation. Seeing the library lit up with this incredible display while learning about Roosevelt's legacy was such a unique experience. This was actually my first drone show, and I can confidently say it will not be my last. It was really, really cool. Watching hundreds of lights moving together to create images and tell a story in the sky was something completely different than anything I had ever experienced before. I also heard from several other visitors that the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library is an incredible experience with interactive exhibits and immersive features that bring Roosevelt's story to life in a whole new way. Not that I needed another reason to come back to Medora, but getting to explore the library is definitely being added to my bucket list. By the time we finally headed back, it had been a very long day, but such a memorable one, celebrating America's birthday in a place so connected to our country's history, surrounded by the beauty of the Badlands, was something I'll never forget. I know everyone has their own experiences and perspectives, but for me, moments like this are a reminder of how fortunate I am to call this country home. I am proud to be an American, and standing there under the stars, surrounded by this incredible landscape, I was reminded just how beautiful and special this country truly is. The Badlands have a way of making you feel small in the best possible way, and I couldn't have imagined a more meaningful place to celebrate America's birthday. On day 5, we headed into downtown Medora to see the strenuous life of Theodore Roosevelt. This was a completely different experience from the big production of the Medora Musical, but it ended up being a really wonderful way to learn more about the man behind the history. The show features an actor portraying Theodore Roosevelt, sharing stories from Roosevelt's incredible life.
I am Theodore Roosevelt and delighted to be with you here today at Old Town Hall Theater.
From his childhood and his struggles with illness to his adventures out west, his time as a rancher, and eventually his years as the 26th President of the United States. I have to admit, I knew some of the basics about TR before coming to Medora, but I learned so much from this performance. His life was honestly far more fascinating than I ever realized. He was an incredibly determined, adventurous, and complicated person, and hearing these stories told from his own perspective made history feel much more personal.
Oh, end of delight. And saying that we were now no longer Roosevelt's from the bush and place it into his lapel. This was the memory of our father, and I knew then, in a worthy cause, meaningful to you, and working hard at work worth doing. I think it's
the ticket price is very reasonable, and it's an easy way to spend a couple of hours indoors while still experiencing something that adds so much to your understanding of this area and its history.
You can say it with me. Ole! Yes, indeed.
If you're already interested in Theodore Roosevelt or just enjoy a good story, I definitely think this is worth adding to your Medora itinerary. After learning all about Roosevelt, we decided it was time to focus on another important part of any summer adventure, a good ice cream stop. It was an incredibly hot day, so we knew exactly where we were headed to cool down. We had already discovered the local ice cream shop earlier in our trip, so this was definitely not our first visit, but when you find a good ice cream spot on a hot summer day, you take advantage of it as often as you can. On day 6, I had planned something really exciting, horseback riding through the national park. I loved the idea of experiencing the Badlands from the back of a horse, but unfortunately, Mother Nature had other plans. With lightning and rain moving into the area, horseback riding and thunderstorms don't exactly mix well, so the ride was canceled. While I was disappointed to miss out on this experience, it just gave me one more reason to come back to Medora. Between exploring the north unit of the park, visiting the Presidential Library, and now coming back to experience the Badlands on horseback, my list of reasons to return just keeps getting longer. Our last event in Medora was the Theodore Roosevelt Dinner Show, and it ended up being the perfect way to wrap up our week. There are 2 options for this experience, a brunch show or a dinner show, and since we're definitely not morning people, we chose the evening performance. And just like all the other food experiences we had in Medora, the meal did not disappoint. The buffet was filled with all the classic fixings, including tri-tip, which Garner absolutely loved. Since I can't eat red meat, I loaded up on potatoes, green beans, and all the other delicious options they had available, and I was definitely not disappointed and did not go home hungry. The show featured another performer portraying Theodore Roosevelt, and just like the first performance we saw earlier in the week, he did an incredible job bringing Roosevelt's personality and stories to life. While some of the stories were familiar, there were also plenty of new ones I hadn't heard before.
Don't be shy. Look at all of you wonderful people from all
Before this
around.
trip, I mostly knew him just as our 26th president. But spending a week in Medora gave me a much deeper appreciation for the person behind the title. The adventurer, the rancher, the conservationist, and the man whose experiences here helped shape his life. This was our final full day in Medora before heading on to our next stop, and it was such a fun way to end the week. If you enjoy history, storytelling, learning about the people who shaped our country, and eating a good meal, the Theodore Roosevelt Dinner Show is definitely worth adding to your Medora itinerary. On our drive back to the RV park after dinner, I had one more little Medora surprise waiting for me. I spotted 2 tiny fawns in the grassy area near one of the hotels, and of course, I immediately had Garner pull over so I could hop out and watch these adorable little deer munching on grass in the evening light. I've always loved wildlife encounters, especially the unexpected ones, and seeing these little fawns come out to say goodbye on our last night in Medora made an already wonderful week feel even more special. It was the perfect little ending to our adventure here in the Badlands. Day 8 was here, and it was time to pack up and head to our next adventure. Mother Nature decided to cry with us as we said goodbye to Medora. It rained all morning, and while Garner wasn't exactly thrilled about hooking up the RV in the rain, that's just part of RV life. In case it wasn't obvious, I absolutely loved my time in Medora. My 3 favorite experiences were the Pitchfork Steak Fondue, the Medora Musical, and my number 1 favorite was exploring Theodore Roosevelt National Park, because wildlife wins my heart every single time. If you're thinking about visiting Medora this summer, I can honestly say I don't think you'll go home disappointed.